Oh yeah.
Welcome to Artistic Work, building Ashe in game.
Wie Ashe im Spiel entstand. Ach Mensch. Peace!
Thank you very much. Welcome to the artist stage at Blizzcon, and thank you for coming out this Saturday morning here. My name is Seth Spalding.
Künstler bei der
I'm the
Arbeit.
art manager for the Overwatch team, and up on stage today we have three artists who are going to be showing you a behind-the-scenes look at some of the tools and processes we use to create skins, in this case, for the Overwatch game. And we're going to be answering your questions about those tools and processes as we go. So, at the aisles, we have Dylan Jones and Marcus Hammerstedt and Ben Zhang, your handsome presenters. And if you have questions about the tools and processes that you see up here, or the people that you see up here, feel free to come to the mic and they will assist you with the questions. We're going to be compressing the actual creation time of a skin in Overwatch greatly. This is a process that takes weeks, a large team, and we're going to be putting it together in about 45 minutes. So we're going to be moving fast, so I want to make sure we do have time for your questions as we go. But the artists will be available at the meet and greet stage 15 minutes after the close of our presentation for signing and additional questions that you have, and that's right past the Epic stage sign over there. So, on stage we have three artists from the Overwatch team, and we're going to do some brief introductions and talk about what you're going to be showing today. So we're going to start with Q Fong, concept team.
Hey guys, my name is Q. I am a character concept artist on Overwatch. Been here a little over 2 years. Today I'm going to show you guys how we kind of think about and concept a skin for Overwatch.
Cool, awesome. And in the middle, Alyssa Diaz, tech art.
Hi guys, my name is Alyssa. I'm a technical artist on the Overwatch team. I've been at Blizzard for about 2 years. A little bit later I'm going to explain a little more about exactly what a technical artist does. But today I'm going to be showing you how I basically take a skin for Ashe and get it set up so that we can put her in the game.
Awesome. And on the end we have John Collins, part of our animation crew.
Hey everybody, my name is John Collins. I'm an animator on the Overwatch team. I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary right after Blizzcon. And today I'm going to kind of walk you guys through the process that we take for both the ideation and execution process for generating a play of the game for our brand new hero, Ashe.
Cool, and additionally, can you tell us something in the game that you're kind of most proud of that you've done?
Sure, yeah, I think for me it's pretty easy. Wrecking Ball has been my favorite hero so far to work on, and I got to do his grand reveal and his pop-up animation. He's a really cool character in that he's this little instinctual hamster, but he also has a really big personality, so that was a lot of fun to do.
Where are the ham and mains out? Where are you guys? There we go, we got one, couple. You're with friends. Alyssa, can you share something that you have worked on that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I'm probably most proud of, I think I worked on I did the Pink Mercy skin, in terms of the rig for
Irgendwie machen die da draußen Musik,
my colleague Renaud, he modeled it, and then I did the
Nervt
rig
überhaupt nicht.
for her setup, so that was obviously really rewarding to work on for the huge turnout we had for that. It was really exciting.
Yeah, it was awesome. And Q, same question for you, something that you can share that you put in the game that you're most proud of.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun concepting some skins for this year's the Year of the Dog 2018 Lunar New Year skins. I did the 4 beast skins for Genji, Zarya, Pharah, and Mercy. So that was really fun.
Awesome. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about Ashe here. So we've got the base skin of Ashe, which you all saw in the opening ceremonies yesterday. And what are you doing here as you start thinking about skin concepts for Ashe?
Yeah, so generally when we start thinking about a concept, what you want to do is first of all analyze the hero, right? As a concept artist, you want to think before you draw. So first of all, I want to analyze the hero. What makes up Ashe? So I'd say visually, Ashe is made up of her, hat, her gun, and her cloak. So when we think about concepts, right, we want to find themes that kind of tie into those elements. And one theme that we thought of that worked really well is like a 1920s, like kind of mobster, roaring 20s mobster kind of feel, Bonnie and Clyde, that kind of thing. So like, you know, like mobsters have a fedora, they have a Tommy gun, and plus she gets to be an awesome boss lady, and Bob can be her goon.
And a giant robot.
Yeah.
Sidekick.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna start sketching in some of those elements.
Cool. Awesome. And Alyssa, I see up on the screen here you've got the static model of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this comes to you from our modeling department, and you get this. What's the first thing you're doing?
So basically, a technical artist is responsible for allowing you to be able to move that static model in the game. So after we finish a concept, that goes to modeling. They create this this static model that doesn't really do anything. So the only way, once you get this model, is to, it's made up of all these tiny points called birds, which you can see here. And there's really no good way to move them from that set. I could grab a chunk of them, move it around like this, but that's not going to be very fun for our animators. So what we do is we actually build a skeleton in Maya. That's all the bones.
Holy shit.
And we're going to attach this sculpture, this 3D sculpture, to this skeleton so that the animators can basically move it as if it's an action figure or a puppet. So all these bones that you see in here are different points that we use
Und sowas ähnliches bitte für ein großes Movies Remake.
basically we add controls to. So you'll see what John is working on. He has all those curves and points that he can move the model. That's what we add on top of this.
So you're basically turning it into an action figure.
Yes.
Cool. And John, over here, bringing the action. Tell us a little bit about what you do. You've now got a posable figure from Tech Art. What's your first step?
Sure. So we actually
You're gonna play the game, right?
Yeah, we're gonna play the game. So we're actually a little bit further ahead in the process. You guys can see that there's this kind of this funny little 2D animatic up in the upper corner. For us, we have to establish, well, what's the key objective of the play of the game first and foremost to kind of inform the process of ideation. So in this case, we know that we want to kind of demo her primary, secondary fire and abilities. So she has a rifle, so we have to get a rifle shot in there. We have the coach gun, which has both self and enemy knockback, and she also has her dynamite. So we kind of have to figure out a way in 5 seconds or less to kind of tell that quick story. So the animatics is kind of the process that we go through to really vet the idea before we actually get into Maya. So you can kind of see that the key ideas, the key poses. The other big thing is figuring out the framing. So exactly, you know, we start a little bit further away, we push in to get a tighter composition on the first shot. Then we get really close and have a really nice push perspective on the coach gun moment because that's the one that's going to have the most bang. And now we're just pretty much translating those key ideas onto the actual model itself using the wonderful rig that our tech artist has built for us, which we don't generally look at in the camera view, but in the perspective view you can see here. And then the last thing about this is just really figuring out the choreography of the camera itself, because in Play the Games, it's not just about the character animation. The camera itself is really an active part of it to make it feel high energy and energetic.
Why are there a bunch of bars in the background?
That's just to give us some context on how the camera itself is moving. So like here, we're transitioning, we're doing a 180-degree flip around so that Ashe turns the camera. To give that feeling that she's aware of everyone around her, the bars are just there so that we kind of understand what the camera's doing during that transition.
Sweet. Thank you very much. And Alyssa, I just have one kind of framing question for you so that people can get an idea of how you guys all communicate with each other during this process. Can you talk a little bit about at what stage Tech Art gets involved with the work that Q is doing?
So basically, we're involved right from the beginning. It's our responsibility to make sure that anything that we're thinking of putting into the game can be put into the game and still look good. So we have to make sure that any kind of concept that our concept artist might come up with is going to work with all the existing animation that we have for that character. So we already have our base character, like Ashe that you see here, who's already set up. We have her skeleton, we have her moving and doing everything behaving that we want. I have to make sure that any kind of model that I'm going to try to put on her is going to be able to work with the same animation. We don't want our animators to have to redo animations for every skin. It needs to work with every skin. So that's a big challenge we have. And so we have to basically keep a watch on anything our concept artist want to do is going to work. One change that we ended up making on her, you can see she has this sort of wraparound cloak in the back. It was originally coming up fully to the hip on both sides. We ended up having them in the concept move it back to here and sort of have this tapered and angular look. And that was to keep it out of this area of this gun. She has this very big gun on her hip in this skin, and they really wanted, it was important for the concept artist to keep that. So having this cloth come sort of back here, it enables us to keep that there without staying out of the danger zone of too much clipping in this gun and making a difficult area where we're not able to keep a cloth out of that area.
How much back and forth is there in that process? I mean, does concept get mad?
Wait, so mad. They're angry people that just berate everyone.
Usually how that goes is I get a cool idea and I'm like, oh man, with a lot of pipes and like fur and hair and cloth, and I bring it over to Alyssa and like, can I please have this? And then she'll look at me and give me a look like, how dare you bring this up to me?
That is not true.
And then we like look at it and say, how the heck am I supposed to animate that?
Well, then the answer is you just get tech art to fix it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Again, if you guys have any questions about what they're doing, please approach the mics and ask. They're available for any kind of questions. And it looks like we may have one here. Yes. Hi.
Hi. I'm currently studying in 3D and modeling, and I was wondering what's the budget of polygons do the modelers have for a skin, for example?
Yeah. Alyssa, do you want to handle that one?
So basically, it's pretty much in the, like, if you can see in this model, it's about, this model has, let's see, 12,810 verts. You see, we use this like heads-up display. It's really our modelers like have to do a lot of hard work to try to keep things under the budget. So I know that was one challenge we especially had on Ashe and Bob, was that with having, it was almost like having two characters in one. So Bob takes up a part of the budget so we actually had to do a lot of work to make sure that we could keep both characters together, still be under the budget with both of them together, and that was a big thing that we had to make sure before we even okayed even the idea of having them in the same character, that they would, that was going to work just in the game. So it's about a few thousand, but it really depends also on the texture, how much, and the size of the character.
Okay.
Thank you. Very good question. We also have to think about ancillary things, like in addition to the weapon, any kind of props of that character might have to consider in the total poly count. So, we have some more questions. It's materialized. Yes, please.
I have a question for Q. How do you adjust to the art style of Overwatch with your own specific art style?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, generally when we hire artists, like when I was hired, is because my style was kind of close to Overwatch already. So generally that's something that we look for when we see an artist. But even then, when I came in, right, there was still a little bit of difference between what I naturally draw and and the Overwatch art style. And for that, I had to rely on kind of my seniors, Arnold Tang and Ben Zhang, where they kind of, I draw something and they kind of keep me on style, pointing different things out. So yeah, I have a lot of help keeping my stuff on style when it's off.
So it's a lot of mentoring and that goes on early in the stage to kind of
it's definitely a process.
keep that out of you.
I like to think I'm okay at it now, but it's definitely a process.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is for the animator. Do you hire gun consultants to kind of help you with gun positioning and handling a gun? Because I'm sure, there's a lot of technical aspects that need to be implemented into the animation itself.
So that's a better question for my producer, because we'd love to, but it's obviously a cost thing. We definitely do a ton of our own reference and research just online to make sure that we familiarize ourselves with the proper way that these weapons are being used. We don't actually take the step of bringing in a private consultant to do that for us. And the cool thing is a lot of times the weapons that we're designing, because they're more futuristic in the Overwatch style, we'll draw on that and then find ways to stylize it to kind of fit the character a little bit more.
Yeah, I think what you said was very true. We do a lot of in-house reference, and you'll see a little bit about that in the Build a Hero panel that's later on today, where we go through from like design work all the way through to audio and VFX on a hero.
The great perk we have is that we seriously have like 50 to 75 Nerf guns all around the office, different sizes, sniper size, shotgun size.
Yeah, between our own cell phones and YouTube, we get a lot of reference. I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna ping pong back and forth during this first stage here. Yes.
Hello. Sorry. I have a question regarding, my kids are very interested in getting into this field of work. I'm curious, as a global question, like what type of training is necessary, or what do they recommend?
Let's start with Q. Talk to us a little bit about how you got into the game industry and what kind of work that you did.
Yeah, so this is actually my first job. I've always loved drawing, and I always loved video games. So, I wanted to do something that kind of combines these two things together. I'm assuming your kids are kind of the same. So I attended the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena for entertainment design, specifically training, for concept design kind of work. And and then I think 2 years later, I got called up by Blizzard, and yeah, here I am today. But
we asked you to drop out.
Okay. Yeah, don't go to school, guys. That's the secret, really, right? But yeah, so I think training-wise, I think just have a love for games and drawing, just have passion. And school, honestly, it's like optional. I think a lot of people in this industry are self-taught, and you don't necessarily have to go to school. I think if people are passionate enough, they'll learn by themselves one way or another. Yeah, thanks.
Alyssa.
Well, I'd say it really depends on exactly what they'd be interested in learning, and also for a lot of different factors. I feel like everyone I've met has come to like their path a much different way, and that was something I would always hear when I was first starting out, and it would really annoy me. It'd be like, oh, you have to find your own path. I'm like, can you just tell me what to do? Like, come on, I know you know, like tell me. But it's actually really true. Some of the ways that people got to where they are is really crazy. For me, it wasn't, it was pretty typical. I studied at Noman School of Visual Effects in Hollywood. It's a 3D school. It's primarily for animation and modeling, and I went there originally intending to be an animator, and that was because I had studied 2D animation and stop motion animation, and it was actually in the process of learning 3D animation that I got interested in rigging, because when you're animating, you have to rely on the rigs you have. So I ended up getting way more interested in that, and I wound up taking some classes in that there. When I sort of went beyond what they offered there, I started just looking online, finding online classes and tutorials, and there's a ton of information that's available, that's out there online. You just have to know where to look. So I'd say there's a lot of different options. I don't think necessarily one has to go to a traditional school, but I do think it does help in that it exposes you and forces you to try a lot of different things. I might never have gotten interested in scripting or rigging if I had never tried been forced to take a scripting class, and like it was something I never thought that I would be good at, and it turned out I totally fell in love with it. So I'd say that's probably the benefit of traditional school, is you might find that you're really good at something and you had no idea.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, I would definitely echo the sentiment that passion above all else trumps any education. Going to a traditional school, an art school, I actually wasn't nearly as smart as Q. I have 2 different degrees, one in cell bio and one in animation. But it's really a passion that you bring to the table. There's a lot more learning resources now. Getting that traditional education certainly has other benefits though, because you learn a lot about the other aspects that go into having a successful career, the biggest of which is beyond passion, your work ethic. You really have to work hard, whether or not you want to be a concept artist, a tech artist, or an animator. You just got to throw yourself in, whether or not you do that in a traditional school or online or just in your own spare time. In the end, all we care about is your demo reel, your data trucks, any grades or resume or anything like that.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Great question. As I said, we're going to be greatly compressing our week's worth of time here, so I'm going to ask the artists up on stage to kind of move to the second stage. And Q, you're going to go to a flat color, kind of look for Ashe.
Yeah, so actually I wanted to show, like, so we're in the line art phase right now, so I kind of wanted to show what it would generally look like at the end of the line art phase. Give it a second here.
Awesome. And how long does it usually take you, like, to get to this final stage? You've done a lot of back and forth. Alyssa's gotten mad at you, told you to change it a few times. How long does it take you to get to this, like, flat color? You're happy with the line?
Yeah, so I think in general, it depends on the hero. Like, sometimes more complicated heroes take a little longer, like Bastion is very complicated. So with heroes like that, it would take quite a bit of back and forth, but, you know, certain other heroes a little more simple, like Genji. It's about a week to finish everything. But I think to get to kind of finish a line art, maybe like 2 or 3 days on average, and then, you know, for a flat color, maybe, you know, another day or half a day or so. But yeah, so this is the kind of what a finished line art would kind of look like. We want to define everything, the entire design through the lines first, so we're not guessing when we start adding color, right? So here's generally what I would have as the lines. And so the next stage, started up here. Next stage, we would kind of now be thinking about color. So we want to start with flat color because this is definitely a part of design. When you're dealing with color, generally what you want to think about is a dominant color, a subdominant color, and also an accent color. So in this case, the dominant colors being the neutrals, the white, grays, the blacks, and then the supporting color, the subdominant color would be the purples and the magentas going on, and the accent color would be your hair, gold, right? A little bit of on your knuckles. And so from here, what I would want to do is to clarify some of the materials. I'm going to start rendering, right? Because I have to think about the guy after me in the pipeline, which is the modeler, who needs to kind of understand exactly what material I'm going for, what I'm drawing, so he can, you know, model it correctly. So that's what I'm going to start doing.
And Alyssa, we've moved to another stage where the character is rigged, it's posable now, and what are you working on during this stage?
So now basically, once I've completed in terms of doing all that weight painting, the character is deforming the way I want it to, and we put a lot of these crazy poses in our scenes. The point of that is to make sure that there's no stray birds, that there's no parts of the model that are flying off into nowhere or following a ball that we don't want it to. You can see we even have, I will paste some, you know, animation poses in here from the game to make sure that everything looks like it should be. And once I'm done with that, I'll move on to basically areas of secondary animation. So there's a lot of pieces of the character, such as her cloak, such as her hair, her earring, things that we want to move along with the character as she moves, but we don't want the animators to have to animate that every frame. That would be a pain if the animators had to go in and make her earring swing in every single animation. But luckily, we have the engine to do that for us. So if I create a setup, basically, for cloth, we make these cloth meshes that you see here. That's actually going to be driving this mesh on top of it. So it's this mesh here, this black and red mesh, that's actually going to be animating by the engine. And with these bones, all those bones that you see here, that's what we call each of these little pieces of the skeleton. It's going to be driving this skirt. And you'll see that once I bring us into the engine in the next stage. And it's the same thing with moving pieces like her hair up here. We have these things that we call physics joints. And basically they look like this when all these capsules will determine those physics joints. And you know, I have one here for the earring, and once I go into the engine, I'm going to be able to tell it, hey, on this bone, I want you to be able to move like this with the velocity of the character as it moves.
Cool, thank you very much. And John, we are over here, we've got the blocking down, timing feels right. What's your next step here?
Yeah, so we call this the splining part of the process, which is you're pretty much just looking to add more definition to the movements. You're looking to break up the movements across the body. You're starting to evaluate whether or not your original intention in terms of the pacing, the beats, the rhythm, are you conveying the ideas properly? Does it feel good? We're starting to worry a lot more about the actual way in which things are moving, so you can start to see there's a better, more fluid sense to the motion itself. And we're also looking for those big pacing issues. So for right now, I'm looking at this being like, I'm not positive, I'm not convinced that the camera work is feeling good. It feels like we have one extra beat in here where I don't know if pushing in on Ashe at the end of this play of the game is the best way to go, because we have this really cramped sense of what the dynamite toss is feeling like. So I think what I'm going to do now is kind of stop and kind of try a little alternate version where we don't push in the camera there and see if that feels better.
Cool. Have you ever gotten to play the game as Ashe?
With Ashe?
Yeah.
In the occasional play test, I may have one or two, yeah.
Nice.
Not as many as I'd like, though.
Thank you. I'm going to go out to the audience here. We're going to go back and forth again. Yeah.
Hi, this is a question more for animation. So, I'm noticing that as you're working on this, you're using kind of more traditional animation techniques, and I had a kind of question regarding using mocap for in-game animation. Do you use that as a tool, as like a starting point for anything, or do you tend to stick more towards the style of animating?
Yeah, I mean, it'll always depend on the project first and foremost. So I've worked with mocap in the past on other projects. Motion capture is great for getting things up on its feet really, really quickly. And it's also great if the world that you're playing in is meant to be hyper-realistic, so that you really have that sense of kind of a human persona. But in our universe, because we're trying to go for more heroic, we're going more stylized, we're going more dynamic, for us at least, there's not really any benefit to using mocap early on in the process. We pretty much always stay hand-keyed right from start to finish because we get that more exaggerated, more heroic feel a lot faster by staying keyframe right from the start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And over here.
Hi, this is my question for the rigging part. Once you finish the rigging, how much bones does Ashe have?
Good question.
Oh, God, I hadn't even thought about it. It's pretty much, it winds up being hundreds, because a lot of them are made up of the cloth. We need so many for the cloth. You can see, and then a lot of what you're looking at in this skeleton, there's a lot that are layered on top of each other. So compared to some of our other characters, actually not that many for her, but because of how many it takes up in the cloth, it winds up being hundreds of them.
Cool. Thank you. I didn't even know the answer to that one. Yes, over here.
What software do you guys use to design the Overwatch characters?
A bunch of stuff. So let's go down the row here. Q.
Yeah, so I use Photoshop, right? Pretty much the industry standard. Yeah, it's pretty much do everything you need to draw, paint, visually.
Where do you get your brushes?
That's a great question. I only use one brush, or I use two brushes actually. So I mostly use this basic round brush that comes with every version of Photoshop. And you can make it a soft round brush, hard round brush, play with kind of the size, the shape of it, and that's mostly what I use. Sometimes when I'm rendering, I like to use this this brush, which is hard on one side, soft on the other, so I can get nice kind of smooth strokes that have a soft edge and a hard edge to create forms. So this is also really useful. But yeah, I pretty much only use those two brushes. I like to keep it simple.
Cool. Alyssa.
Well, we mostly, for the rigging part and the skinning part, we use Maya. And then for all of our simulations and final, we do that in our engine. Our engine, which is, I'll actually be showing you next. We have our own proprietary engine that we developed called TED.
And John.
Yeah, for us, it's less about the software. The only software that we really use to animate is Maya, but a big part of the process is just kind of doing your homework on the character themselves, trying to identify characters from live-action films that maybe echo the personality and whatnot, so that we can kind of define the way they act, the way they perform, so that our players can really get that sense of personality. But once we have that established, we pretty much just get right into Maya and start animating there.
Thank you. And we'll go over here. We got time for a couple more.
This is for the concept artist. how much trial and error goes into creating a skin that people want to use while also maintaining that character's unique silhouette?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, quite a bit. So sometimes, you know, we have crazy ideas that might push the silhouette a little bit, and you kind of have to, we'll put the idea out there. It looks good to me because I've been staring at it all day. And we'll put the idea out there for the team to see, and then I'll always get feedback like, oh, it feels maybe like, you know, McCree's skin might start feeling like Reaper. So we definitely want to go back and, go back and make sure the silhouette of the skin doesn't break what you see in game. I think for me, it's like the more skins I do for one hero, the easier it is next time, the less iteration I have to go because I kind of know the pitfalls. Like I think I've done like 3 or 4 Mercy skins now, so I think I know Mercy inside and out. But yeah, for like other heroes that maybe I've done fewer skins for, it'll take a little more feedback. But yeah, hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over here.
Hi, my name is David Shinkle. I'm a graphic designer, and my question is for Q as well. In the creative development process for the character Ashe, with her primary skin or alternative skins, have you found that that's affected the character's story development or background development? Maybe even retroactively, where you just have some idea that they're like, wow, we love that, and that's got to be in her story.
So for Ashe, for Ashe, I wasn't involved with the primary hero development, but I think for some of the other skins, that's definitely happened before, right? Usually it'd be like you have a cool story for the hero, and then we're like, oh, what skin could we make out of her story, right? But that's definitely, I think that's happened before, where sometimes you have a cool skin and we maybe like retroactively tie it back into the story. I don't have a specific example, but yeah, that could happen. I think our development process is pretty organic. Of
Yeah,
good ideas.
it will happen. If I can dive in there, it will sometimes happen from design, not even within feedback from the art team, but design will say, oh, we tried out this E ability and that wasn't fun. We're going to give this hero another E ability, and instead of a gun, they need a whip or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, we go back to Q and say, I know you spent a week on that gun and it looked awesome. We really like it. It was perfect, but it needs to change. That happens quite a bit. Probably every other hero has some major kind of design rework that requires us to go back to the concept stage and redo it.
One of the things that I also like about our team philosophy is that good ideas come from anywhere. You know, it's really not that design informs it all the time, or story informs it all the time, or concept does. It's a very free-flowing thing where we collaborate a lot, and it's pretty much the best ideas make it to the top that way.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great question. Yeah, we're here.
Hi. I wanted to know, between all 3 departments, what is the most challenging hero to work with?
Ooh. All right, so Q, when you say, hey, we need a skin for, what makes you go, oh?
Bastion. So for you don't know, Bastion, the way it's rigged, I don't know how you guys did this, but it actually works. He actually, 90% of what he does when he transforms into a turret, it actually works. I think somebody in our office 3D printed a Bastion from our in-game model, and you can actually transform it. It's pretty cool. Which means, though, there's a lot of limitations when it comes to, Bastion, and and a lot of, because of budget issues, a lot of when he transforms into a turret and into a tank, it's a complete model swap. So then we have to build the tank design out of the pieces that already exist on the base character, which is very hard to do when you're also trying to, put the theme on the skin itself and also make it look like Bastion, but not too close to the other skins. So Bastion usually takes a long time, and even after we're done with the concept, what'll happen is 3 months later, our outsource will come back and be like, hey, I need a better view of whatever, and we have to redesign half of it. It's a lot of paint over, a lot of back and forth. So Bastion, yeah, total nightmare.
I love the fact that I didn't even finish my prompt and you had the answer already. Let's see if that keeps going. Alyssa, what's the hero that you get that you go,
It would probably be a different answer based on which one of us is working on it, because I know Diva is pretty difficult, probably because there's just so much to do. She has a mech and she has a bunch of different versions of her that have to go. So we have a half of her that has to go in the mech, and then a whole body for when she's baby Diva. But for me personally, I'm the most probably Roadhog, because he has he's our only character in the game with breastbones that he actually actually has bones for all the jiggle in his stomach and his body and everything, and
which is really fun to animate, by the way.
Yeah. It's really difficult sometimes when you're trying to make a whole new skin for him that has to work with all the crazy things that the animators did with his original skin. So that's definitely, I would say that's my answer for most.
I have learned something here today. I did not know Roadhog was our only character with jiggle bones.
Only character.
Only get that here on the artist stage, folks. And John, the hero that you're like, what do I do here?
Well, it's broken up for us between characters who maybe personality-wise, character-wise, there's a little bit less to dig out. So Symmetra for me is one where like I don't really understand her character motivation nearly as much, and she doesn't have those really obvious quirks that we can kind of amplify through our animation. And then from a physical standpoint, we also have the challenge of dealing with characters like Reinhardt, where it's volumes, right? It's like it's got giant shoulder pads and big proportions. So like trying to come up with good pushed broad ideas that don't cause a lot of penetration issues with his very kind of stocky self. So I would say those are the two most challenging.
That's an awesome question though. Thank you. And we're going to do one more over here, and then I'm going to switch the artists over to take a look at the final product and talk about their end stage here. So, hit it.
Hi, this is a question for Alyssa. Regarding like the secondary motion systems you mentioned, like cloth or the hair, earrings, what criteria do you use to decide which ones are going to be handled by the animators and which ones are going to go to be handled by the engine? And regarding that, like having all those different motion systems, simulations and stuff, would that be appealing to you guys for like a demo reel for the character tech department and stuff like that?
You mean a demo reel like for our job that we do? Yeah.
For a client.
Yeah, definitely. We love to see people's experience with tools like that, and especially with game engines. I was actually fortunate enough, I came directly from, this was actually my first job in games, I came directly from working in film. So it's different, it definitely is a whole different world, but a lot of it is the same. So I would say, with your question about what do the animators do and what do we do, it really depends on what is essential to, what are we going to be able to get the result we want with the engine, and we're not going to be able to get the result we want, and we really need it to be animated. Fortunately, we have a way to also, if there's ever a case where the animators want a really specific animation, say for the skirt, there's a particular, they want it to move in just a certain way, and we're not getting that result with the results from the engine. That's why I actually have these bones here. So I have my sim cloth basically skinned to these bones, which if the animators want control over it, they can turn down the control of the engine and turn up the control of these bones, and they can themselves basically animate the cloth just like it wasn't simulated, and then they can decide how much they want that cloth to be guided by their animation and how much they want simulated. So it could be almost completely animated with a little bit of simulation on top, but that's a really powerful thing that, yeah, it's great. Whenever we want something to be animated, we can turn that off.
All right, thank you.
Cool, so I'm gonna move the artists on to their final stage here, and I know there are some more questions, and we'll see if we can get to them. If we don't get to everybody who has questions, in 15 minutes after we're done with this, all of these artists are going to be over in the meet and greet area off to the left here to answer questions one-on-one, and also for signing any merchandise you might have. So, Q, what do we got?
So I'm kind of going through and rendering this stuff, but let's take a look at what it would look like at the end. Alright, so sorry, give it a second. Here we go. So this is something, kind of the end quality that I'm going for a front view. Generally want to have a front view, a back view of a character, and then plus whatever, props they might have. So for her, it'd be a gun, and then also, front and back view of Bob. So from a front view like this, what I'm looking for is, I don't want to, as a concept artist, you don't want to fully illustrate something, right? At the same time, yes, you're trying to provide inspiration and kind of a beautiful piece of art to inspire the rest of the team. But at the same time, what I need to think about is, making it as clear for the modelers. So what I'm focused on is like defining how glossy materials are. You know, if it's metal, if it's cloth, if it's slightly shinier cloth. You know, what's hair, what's skin. You know, where the wooden grip on the gun. Making those things clear is my top priority because half my job is making a blueprint. So yeah, something like this.
And Alyssa.
So now I've brought the character into the engine. So this is what it looks like when we first import it. And you can see, when I show her around on here, you can see all those pieces that are going to be moving through the engine are what's moving right now. So we have the cloth going, we have her hair, we have her earring there. So an interesting thing about her is that for this, in her base skin, you can see here, her hair is cloth, just like her cloak. We kept it pretty limited movement because we didn't want it always flying up into her hat or flying into her face when very active. But for this skin, because they had designed such a specific style for her hair and really wanted this like over the shoulder look, I decided to put physics joints in it instead. So actually, instead of the cloth, it has these. It has these hair joints instead, and that's what you actually see jiggling around. And we can control basically how that movement is with all these settings that we have in here. And it all depends on, you know, the size of the capsules we made, the settings we have on the capsules, the settings we have on the physics joints. And that all combines to that we just want to get like just the exact look that we want.
And then she's fully ragdolled too, right?
Yeah, and basically what those capsules also allow us to do, as I was showing you before, which is really fun, is when they go full ragdolls, basically this is what allows us to kill the character in the game. So, and it's a lot of fun to play with because we can just kind of throw them around, and that's where it gets its name, is because they're essentially a ragdoll. And basically when the character dies, they play this death animation that is basically, all the animator needs to do is basically one frame, a few frames that determine like what's kind of the start of that velocity, and then the engine is just allowed to drop the character and animate it according to physics. So that's what you are seeing here, is all those joints, basically at the points of her arms, all of these little cones in here that we have. It determines how far those bones are allowed to move. We don't want it to be so that when they collapse, the bones detach or the arm flies through the body. We want to make sure they're limited so that it falls basically as you would expect a person to if they were dying.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And like from that static mesh that you get from modeling to where we are right now, what's an average time to create?
It really, for the initial hero, it can be months, because there's a lot of going back and forth, and changes are made to the design, then we make changes to the model, it trickles down. But when we're doing skins, depending on how difficult the character is, it can be anywhere from a few hours
Das ist ganz schön scheiße schwierig.
to a few weeks. Wow. Depends on just how tough the skin is, how many challenges it presents for us.
Cool. Thank you very much. And John, we have a play of the game.
Ich hätte da bestimmt noch nie sowas angefasst.
Polishing the shot up at this point. Mainly what goes in the polish. A lot of people don't really appreciate the fact that we can get the shot like 90% of the way there in about.
Das ist schwerer als wie einfach irgendwelche komischen Strichmännchen nur.
With all the little tiny details, so you know things like making sure that when she fires the gun, there's like a reaction in the shoulder. We tie that action in. That she squints a little bit. Her face kind of scrunches up just for that brief little beat. All those little tiny details that kind of really make it sing. That takes us about 30% of the overall time. We're doing a lot of little stuff like checking penetrations, making sure that the fast little reload that she does right here, that her fingers are actually offset and animated, they're not just static. We're also kind of really trying to make sure that we tie in the camera at this point. So you notice that there are these little focal length hits to the camera every time she fires. There's a really big one here on the coach gun. You know, adding camera shake, just things that really tie everything together and make things feel more dynamic. And then one of the cool things about the polish phase too is we get to add little details like this, where because I took away that last camera push in, we had about 10 or 15 frames extra here where it's like, oh, let's put in like a cool little finger kind of gunslinger detail as a slight anticipation of where we're going with kind of telegraphing what's about to happen. And pretty much at this point, we're also getting it in-game so that our VFX artists and sound artists can go ahead and do their work. What we end up with is this completed play of the game.
Oh, we have sound there?
So this after they've gone in, put their effects works in. Normally there is sound as well, but if you want to check that out, just take a look at the game.
You can all imagine the cues. Alright. We're at time here, but anyone with questions, please, please, please bring them over to the meet and greet area in 15 minutes. I want to give a round of applause to our artists here. Amazing work. And thank you all for coming out here on a Saturday morning. I know that can be a little rough at Blizzcon. We appreciate it. Thank you all for coming today and have a great Blizzcon.
Ooh.